Thank you for joining us today from all of us here at Decor Roofing Construction and for all of those who are part of Inspire the Spirit, our little ministry here. We're glad you joined us for our Wednesday morning devotional. Now, if you were like me, you woke up this morning maybe and you were really excited. It was going to be, you couldn't wait. You had the long Labor Day weekend. You had a full slate of college football coming. You got the weather cooling down, and you just could not wait. And if you were like me, you woke up this morning with all those things on your mind. You said to yourself, this is going to be the best Friday ever. Then you realized it was Wednesday, and you were only halfway through the week. And you realize the struggle is real. And if we're honest, that's kind of the way life is. We're going through a season or a storm. We're struggling with something. And we think we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And we're almost there to what we've been looking forward and anticipating. And all of a sudden you realize, I'm halfway there. I've still got half the struggle to go. I gotta persevere. In James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4, he writes in God's Word, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." How often do you consider it pure joy when something bad happens? You're facing a trial, a situation. We're told to consider it as joy. Think of it differently, because it's an opportunity for God to reveal something in your life. And you know He's testing you. He's building your character. He's improving and working on your perseverance, because there's a purpose in the pain that's coming down the road. And we're to anticipate the joy that's coming, even in the midst of the struggle. Wayne Dyer, an author, wrote it and said it this way: "With everything that has happened to you, you can either feel sorry for yourself or treat what has happened as a gift. Everything is either an opportunity to grow or an obstacle to keep you from growing. You get to choose." Today's message is the struggle. And we all struggle with different things at different points of life, and each struggle is unique to our own set of circumstances. You know, we all love a good drama. We like that hard-fought ball game that comes down to the final play or the final minutes. We like good TV dramas and movies. We like it when the main character is against all odds, and he's got bad guys against him or her, and at every turn something goes wrong, and you're like, there's no way they can get out of this. And they're going through all kinds of pain and suffering and struggling and near-death experiences, just trying to survive, to overcome. And we all like a good ending. And we like it as long as we're not the main character. Because honestly, we don't want to go through whatever they had to go through to get to the ending. But everybody has a unique set of challenges, and everybody has to face something different in their own lives. Now, I used to like the Dilbert cartoons. Remember Dilbert? He was the little business guy, engineer guy, the little cartoon. He had the tie that curled up, and he worked at a very dysfunctional workplace. His boss was a little quirky. His co-workers had their own unique personalities and hang-ups, and he wrote these comic strips about corporate America. And business people loved it because even in the satire, there was some truth. Scott Adams wrote Dilbert. He was the creator. He was the writer. And he had his own struggle in life. You see, as a person with a very successful comic strip, he would speak often at conventions in public speaking events, and he was really good at public speaking. He could command with his voice. He could read from the teleprompter or the PowerPoint behind him. And yet, he had a struggle in life. His personal day-to-day voice, think about your inside voice. When he sat down at a table one-on-one to talk with his wife or his children, he couldn't speak. His public speaking voice was fine, but his private one-on-one voice was like permanent laryngitis. And he was diagnosed with a condition called spasmodic dysphonia. I probably pronounced it wrong, but this condition was his brain functioned correctly in front of crowds and commanding, but in one-on-one situations, a lower voice, when he had to respond and interact, the brain waves and the neuropaths in his brain would not kick in, and he had laryngitis. He could not speak. It was very frustrating trying to do homework or talking with his child. Well, one day, doing homework with his child, he read a poem. And it said, "Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over the candlestick." And he said it out loud and very strongly. And he was shocked because he never could do that. And he found out that when he read poems, nursery rhymes, poetry, his brain, the part of the brain that did that rhythmic speaking, functioned. And over time, they found out he was cured of his symptoms because the part of his brain that wasn't functioning in private conversations, the poetry and the poems began creating pathways that it kind of ignited or opened up that part of his brain that allowed his individual quiet voice to come back. You see, the truth is we've all had a situation. His was very unique and very rare. We have to remember that God's grace is always greater than our struggle. I don't know what you're struggling with today. We all struggle with different things at different parts of our lives. You may be going through a financial struggle right now. Maybe it's physical, a health issue. Maybe it's a mental issue. Things just aren't right. But we have to always remind ourselves that God's spiritual forces that are for you are so much greater than the evil forces of our enemy that are against us. Philippians 4:6 says, "Do not worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. Tell God what you need and thank Him for all that He has done." You know, this verse is very interesting. Do not worry about anything. It's a command. There's no ifs, ands, or buts or exceptions. Do not worry about anything. And that sounds easy. And the antidote is, what do you do instead of worry? You pray about everything. And in doing so, you just tell God what you need, but you also don't forget to thank Him for what He has already done. You have to remind yourself your story is still in progress. None of us are a finished product yet. And we must learn to trust Jesus through the process, through the struggle. Learn to embrace the process, embrace the struggle. You see, life is a marathon. It's a marathon race. It's a long distance race. It's not a sprint. I saw a video the other day of a sprinter doing a 100-yard dash. And as he broke through the end of the race, he was hopping. He took his shoes off and he threw his shoes on the ground and he started fanning his own shoes. And his buddy came out with a fire extinguisher and sprayed his shoes down. He ran so fast his shoes were on fire. He was making a spectacle. And he was jumping up and down celebrating. Yet life's not that way. Life's like the marathon. If you watch marathon runners, when they cross the finish line, they almost collapse into it. They've been running for 26 miles, not 100 yards. It's all they can do to some of them can't even lift their arms up to celebrate much less go through an orchestrated dance routine. Because the endurance race is like life. It's full of pain, it's full of hard work, and it's full of discipline. The struggle is real, but it's not permanent. Character must be strengthened through the adversity that we face each and every day. Each and every individual has some level of adversity they must go through. Maybe it's a setback. Maybe it's a disability. But God can use each of those situations for His glory and for our own personal success. Willie Shoemaker is a great example. I've talked about him before. He's considered by many to be one of the greatest horse racing jockeys in the world. Willie Shoemaker was born in a small town in Texas in 1931. He weighed in at 2.5 pounds. He was so small at birth that the doctors that came to the house did not think he would survive the night. And his mom put little Willie in a shoebox and set him on a wood stove, an oven, that had some little burning embers and was giving off enough heat, just trying to keep his body warm enough to survive the evening. And Willie obviously survived that night, but he grew up and remained very small. He only grew to be 4 feet 10 inches, and he only weighed 91 pounds. And many people saw that as a disability or an issue. His diminutive size was his weakness. And yet, he went on to become a giant in the thoroughbred racing world. At age 18, he ran his first race and won. And he eventually won 8,833 victories in his horse racing career. At the age of 19, and this would have been in the year 1950, he was racing in California and making $2,500 a week, which $2,500 a week in 1950 is a lot of money. And he was a teenager. He was 19 years old. He went on to win 11 of the big three, the Triple Crown races. Even though he never actually won the Triple Crown in an individual year, he won it. He became a member of the Jockey Hall of Fame. He won numerous awards. And the lesson that we learned from his story is, don't give up. Your challenge, what's perceived to be your weakness, may just become the blessing that God uses in your life. It may become your testimony that God has used you because He's putting someone else in your path to share what you've been through, to help them navigate their own personal struggle. He may be using a bad thing that happened to you or some event in your life to volunteer, to help others who maybe experience the same thing, because the perseverance and the character that God built in you was intentional to share the glory of His kingdom with others who may not get to experience His word. In 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, is a story about where Paul talks about his affliction. Paul wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. Is considered one of the great apostles of all time. And yet, he had an affliction. The Bible does not tell us specifically what it is. Some people think it might have been a mental affliction. A lot of people think he had epilepsy, had convictions. They said he walked with a bad limp. And maybe it set him back. And in his mind, the devil would point to his weakness and constantly remind him that he could not continue his mission for Christ because he had this. And 3 specific times, Paul says, I went to God in prayer and I prayed please take this affliction from me. Take this struggle away from me so I can do greater things for you. It's holding me back. But in 12:9, he got the response. Each time he said, my grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I'm glad to boast about my weakness, Paul writes, so that the power of Christ can work through me. He went to God, he prayed to Jesus, hey, heal me and I can do greater things. 3 times, and Jesus said, no, and here's why. Because it's through your weakness that you have to draw closer to me. You have to lean into me during the struggle and realize you're not strong enough to do this on your own. And that's when you draw closer to me. And that's where my power works best. Because then my power is magnified through your weakness so all the people can see it. You see, with God, our weaknesses turns into winning. And that's God's power at work through us. As Christian warriors, we're worshipers because we focus on who is strong, not our own strength. But make no mistake, it's up to you to act and to take responsibility and to get up and put the hard work in. Just like we mentioned earlier, whether it's financial, physical, or mental, God may be calling you to act. If you're having financial problems, you might need to go work on a budget and take that budget to God and pray over it and put together a plan. If it's physical, you may need to put together an exercise routine or a diet program. If it's mental, you may need to go see some counseling, do some therapy. But whatever it is, avoid the delusion that it's solely on your own strength. And it's fully the outcome depends upon the grace of God. It's God working through you that allows us to work through our struggles. Remind yourself, God and I are a majority. If God's on your side, nothing else matters. If God's not on your side, nothing else matters. Psalms chapter 27, chapter 20, verse 7 states, some nations boast of their chariots and horses, but we boast in the name of the Lord our God. You see, chariots and horses represent worldly power. Today, that may be money, power, fame, possessions. And it says some people brag about those things. And that's where they find their worth. And that's what they rely on to get through their struggles. But we as Christians, we boast in the name of the Lord our God. Is that what you're boasting in today? Is that what you're most proud of, your relationship with Jesus? Because you fully rely on Him no matter what the struggle is. So has your life worked out exactly like you planned? Probably not. We've all had plans, goals, and objectives. But God has a plan that's higher than that. Now, does that mean plans are not good? Absolutely not. The Bible tells us to plan. It gives an example. We don't go build a building without a budget to make sure we have the right amount of funding to buy the material and pay for the labor to build a building, because if we get halfway there and we fail, we're a laughing stock. People will ridicule you. So plans are good, budgets are good, exercise routines are good. All these things are good, except when we do them on our own. We have to learn to be flexible. You see, God is the true author of our life, and He knows the plans that He has for you. So true success in life comes not just in planning, but planning in alignment with God. You see, some people create their own plans in life and they take off with no thought of what God wants for them in their life. And then they wonder why their plans fail or why life gets so hard. But when we're in prayer and when we're consulting in prayer, with God first, asking for wisdom. God, I got this thought. God planted those thoughts in your mind, but He wants them to bring those plans to Him. Okay, I've got this struggle. I've got this opportunity, this challenge. Here's what I'm thinking. I need your wisdom. I need your input. I need your redirection. If God is truly the author of our life, quit taking the pen out of His hand and trying to write your own story. Today, be confident that your Savior is greater than your struggle and He's greater than your suffering. Jesus has done it before. He will do it again. Reflect back on all the previous challenges you faced in life. We can all look back at some point in our life and say, at that point in time, that was the lowest point in my life. There was no way I was going to survive that. That loss was too great. That setback was too great. How did I get through it? You're still here today. And when we look back at the challenges and the setbacks and the loss and the mourning and the grieving and the things we've endured in life, we start seeing God's work in our lives. We start seeing the perseverance. We start seeing the character development. There was an author, a Christian writer, his name was Lee Strobel, and he was interviewing a philosopher named Peter Kraft. And they were talking about this. And they were trying to find the answer to struggle and suffering. And they figured out and they concluded that the answer to suffering is not an answer at all. It's the answerer, said Kraft. It's Jesus Himself. It's not a bunch of words. It's the Word. It's not a tightly woven philosophical argument. It's a person. The person. The answer to suffering and struggling cannot just be an abstract idea, because this isn't an abstract issue. It's a personal issue. It requires a personal response. The answer must be someone, not just something, because the issue involves someone. What they were talking about here is so many times in life, we look for the quick fix, the answer in something. I need more money. I need more resources. I need more people. I want. And they're saying each one of us, our struggle is so unique. It's so personal to us. No one else has ever been in this point of time facing what you're facing today. And because the issue is so personal and the struggle is real, the only person is the answer, Jesus. Jesus is the Word. He is the person. He is the answer to our struggles. Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. That verse gets taken out of context so many times. I can do all things through Christ. Through Christ is the reason and the answer to our struggles. So we wrap up today. Remember the words of C.S. Lewis. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Remember today, God is not disconnected from your struggle. He is in control of the struggle, so keep moving forward in faith. He will never leave you and never forsake you. Thank you for joining us this week. I hope you have a wonderful Labor Day weekend. We'll see you right back here next Wednesday in the month of September. God bless. Have a blessed week.